Hello, everyone. Welcome to this live webinar. My name is Eleanor. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager at Security Compass and your host for today's webinar. I'm here with my colleagues to talk about how SD Elements automates threat modeling to help solve organizations' needs around cybersecurity risk mitigation. Before we get started, I'd like to go through some housekeeping items really quickly. You can access the recording of this webinar after today's event in two ways. First is via email. We'll send you an email with a link to the recording after this session. And second is by visiting the resources section of our website. Also, we encourage you to ask questions. So please submit them into the Q&A box, and then we'll address them during the Q&A session at the end. And lastly, if you have any follow-up questions or any topics that you'd like us to cover in the future, please send us an email at contact@securitycompass.com. And now allow me to introduce our speakers, beginning with myself. Just to provide some more background, I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager at Security Compass. I have extensive experience working on enterprise software products in cybersecurity, and IoT and other types of products in diverse roles in areas such as product management, product marketing, software implementation, and technical support. Joining me are some colleagues, Adiran Thermal. He's our Senior Solutions Engineer at Security Compass. Adiran is a seasoned application security engineer with 8 years of experience in cloud services, business analytics, and telecommunications. We also have Dennis Brink, our Vice President of DevSecOps. Dennis brings over 25 years of experience in creating and executing strategies for new technologies, bringing products and services to market, sales leadership, and building high-performing teams to deliver client outcomes. Dennis leads a team of DevSecOps consultants that helps organizations deploy SD elements quickly and efficiently. Last but not the least, we have Laura McLeod, Vice President of Customer Success at Security Compass. Laura brings over 10 years of industry experience with a focus on customer retention, growth, and adoption. Laura leads a team of passionate customer success and technical account managers that work closely with users and administrators of SD elements to help drive product adoption and achieve their organization's success metrics. And now let's get started with the main presentation. Security professionals understand that threat modeling of software is a valuable exercise to assess risk and ensure that necessary defensive measures are in place to prevent threats from taking advantage of system flaws, and also to make sure that these measures are working effectively. However, implementing threat modeling in today's highly digital world poses some important challenges. At a high level, threat modeling involves these important steps: analysis of components and their interactions, identification of threats and appropriate mitigations, and confirmation that the mitigations have been done. Based on our market research and observations, the challenge lies in attempting to integrate traditional threat modeling methods into a complex and rapidly changing digital world. These methods break because they can't scale effectively. And why is that? Well, first, they are manual. Based on our research, this is the one problem that gives the most heartache to many security executives. They're also expensive because they rely on specialized security experts, and they're inconsistent across different people building the threat models, which makes reliability, traceability, and defensibility difficult. And once you pass the recommended mitigations over the fence to the development teams, there's a lot of friction because the mitigations fall short at detailing technical steps that development teams need so that they can incorporate these mitigations into their code as they write code. Traditional threat modeling methods are also difficult to integrate automatically with other development tools and security technologies like issue tracking and scanning tools. And lastly, beyond the need to satisfy all these technical requirements, threat modeling also needs to address crucial business requirements around compliance and privacy. So companies that persist through these challenges and continue to implement threat modeling within their organizations find themselves in one or a combination of these end states. They run a threat model only on a fraction of their portfolio, or their threat models quickly become out of date as software progresses from design to development to production. And or the mitigations identified as part of the threat model are not implemented or not implemented well because getting it done causes a lot of friction between security and development teams. So this leaves them with unidentified risks in the broader portfolio or risks that are maybe identified but not mitigated. And so what? Who and what are at stake? Well, development and product teams are not happy because the quality of the product they ship and their release times are impacted. But wait a second. So when that happens, there's a potential impact on the entire organization's reputation and financials. But if you take a step back further and look at the bigger picture, it's really their customers and the privacy of their data that are at stake, or if, or rather when a breach happens. So, well, worry not. We present to you SD Elements, which takes a different approach to threat modeling, one that allows you to scale so that you can mitigate cybersecurity risks and improve compliance across the vast majority of your software portfolio. You can think of SD Elements as the ultimate shift-left approach to threat modeling. It comes in at the earliest stage possible before the problem happens, or technically speaking, before system flaws or weaknesses turn into vulnerabilities that attackers prey upon in your code or infrastructure. So what does SD Elements do? Our platform looks at your technology stack, software, devices and embedded systems, APIs, and the deployment environment, as well as your requirements to comply with regulations and standards that are important to you. SD Elements takes all these contexts about your assets and business requirements and automatically identifies security and privacy controls to eliminate weaknesses that threats target. And our platform's job doesn't end here. SD Elements takes the extra mile to help make the task of embedding security and compliance into your software and infrastructure easy for your development teams. What that means is, based on the recommended security controls, SD Elements provides detailed guidance to implement these controls into code, delivered to your teams using issue tracking tools they already use, like Jira. So let's take a closer look at some of the automation capabilities of SD Elements that really help organizations to scale threat modeling. Upon gathering requirements using an adaptive survey or integrations, SD Elements identifies two things rapidly: the weaknesses in your tech stack and infrastructure that make your system vulnerable to attacks, and the appropriate preventive security controls to mitigate these weaknesses in your specific environment. Because SD Elements leverages a survey that doesn't require specialized modeling techniques, it renders itself naturally as an enabler of collaboration with stakeholders in privacy, compliance, and engineering. And as I've alluded to before, SD Elements automatically integrates security guidance into development workflows. This guidance includes coding instructions, code samples, and short just-in-time training videos. Lastly, SD Elements allows you to quickly generate reports on the weaknesses found in your system and the completion status of controls. So it enables you to be audit ready with minimal manual effort required, something that a lot of our customers really appreciate. This is a view of the SD Elements comprehensive library that provides relevant content specific to your development stack. To mention some of our sources of knowledge, we have OWASP Top 10, OWASP API Top 10, OWASP IoT Attack Surface, ASVS, the ISA or IEC 62443, and NIST 800-53. I'd also like to draw your attention to some of the highlights on the left-hand side of the screen. Note that we have over 40 unique regulations and standards in our library. So examples are the GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, PCI, FedRAMP, and so on. And then on the lower left-hand side, you can see we have over 700 weaknesses or problems in SD Elements and over 1,700 controls or tasks translated into over 1,000 security guidance in developer speak. This shows a partial list of solutions that SD Elements integrates with. And as you can see, SD Elements fits into any development environment because of our extensive integrations. If you'd like to see the full list, do visit our website to see the full and extensive list of our product integrations. And now I will hand it over to Aduran to provide you with a short demonstration of SD Elements.
Thank you so much. All right, let's see SD Elements in action. And so through a threat modeling approach, we want to first identify what we are working on. And that's what we'll do through our project survey. The project survey is going to take a look at what programming languages are being used, what technology and frameworks are being leveraged, what web technologies are being used, what database technologies are being leveraged, and we'll dive deeper into some of the deployment options that your specific project might be using, such as cloud service providers or containers. And then we'll also dive into your security functionality and features. We'll try and understand your protocols that are being leveraged, and we'll also try and capture different privacy regulations that might be in scope for this specific project, such as GDPR or CCPA or New York Shield. And then based on this project survey, what we're going to do is be able to identify weaknesses that threats target within minutes, which ultimately allows us to better understand what can go wrong. And so our weaknesses really try and showcase the potential items that your specific project could fall short on. And we list these out. And rather than having to go through a manual threat modeling exercise, you can generate these weaknesses within seconds through that survey. And after you answer those questions within a few minutes. Based on these weaknesses, we're also going to try and identify controls specific to your technology stack early and often. And this addresses the what are we going to do about it issue when it comes in towards threat modeling. Often organizations might do a great job of enumerating threats, but they really struggle with showcasing what needs to happen next, especially from a developer perspective or from a architecture or DevOps perspective. What needs to be applied to be able to mitigate this specific weakness that's at hand. And so within our weaknesses, we're going to showcase the problem, the solution, and we're also going to showcase some how-tos, which include code snippets or configuration details, which allow your organization to quickly understand what needs to happen without having to rely on Stack Overflow or Google to address the questions at hand that might exist. And similarly, as we mentioned earlier, there is this idea of just-in-time training modules, which are really quick 1-minute micro modules, which showcase what needs to happen to be able to mitigate that control and to be able to actually address that specific weakness at hand. And these micromodules are quickly accessible by users. And organizations don't want to necessarily take a look at that content directly within SD Elements. They would much rather have that guidance integrated into development workflows. And ultimately, whether that's Jira, GitHub, or a different issue tracker that you might be leveraging, SD Elements will provide the details around the problem and solution that's been outlined, and then also those how-tos, including the code snippets or configuration details. And there's even links towards the just-in-time training modules to be able to learn more about what's going on. And then based on this, your team would go in and mark items as being done or complete, whether that be in Jira or potentially even in GitHub. And then based on that, we can actually start to simplify the whole audit and reporting capabilities. Taking a look at our problem summary report, we can quickly identify what weaknesses exist within your specific project. And you can dive deeper into a specific weakness to learn more about what it is, and also what controls exist to be able to mitigate that weakness. And you can quickly understand what the status is of that control, whether it's in a complete state or whether it's been verified. Similarly, for audits that might occur, say for example, if you're trying to obtain SOC 2, you could use our SOC 2 compliance report to quickly understand which tasks are relevant to obtain specific compliance based on the different sections of SOC 2. And you can quickly understand where your gaps are from a SOC 2 perspective, and you can showcase what you've done throughout your project. Similarly, GDPR is another approach where you might need to have privacy regulators or other organizations be able to validate your GDPR compliance. And the GDPR compliance report really breaks down GDPR article by article and showcases which tasks from SD Elements would be relevant. All right, thank you so much. And back to you, Eleanor.
Perfect. Thank you, Aduran. And now we are going to run a quick poll just because we are curious about to learn more about you. So I'm just checking my screen. Okay, so what tools are you currently using in your current organization to create threat models? Please choose all that apply. We'll give you a few seconds to participate in this poll and hope that you do. And while you guys are doing that, I will share my screen to prepare for the next segment. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, and now we'll hand it over to Dennis to talk about our DevSecOps services. Take it away, Dennis.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning if you're on the West Coast. We just want to talk about some of the services involved. Like a lot of complex problems, software only creates part of the solution. We also need the people and the process to go with the technology. So we've developed enterprise delivery services, and that allows you to get there faster by lowering your project risk, creating a self-sufficiency by the training efforts that go on with our customers. Having an expert guide you is absolutely an advantage in trying to get that working. If we jump ahead, the key features of what we're talking about is we have strong project management to really ensure that we emphasize the parts of the program that are the most important, streamlining the process. It's not like a typical install of software. We spend more talking about how to involve yourself in the process with a security and a DevSecOps perspective. And also project artifacts we have that we could just basically bring to the table to solve some of the challenges without people having to recreate them. Most of our projects were done within 90 days. The software is up and running almost immediately, but that's really helping people put the program together. So we're really there to give that expert level guidance, and virtually everyone on our team has done threat modeling. They are a security engineer. They have that expertise as well as understand SD elements. So they've lived the real world challenges and understand how to do that. Our approach is called success pillars. If we go to the next. Yeah, we've identified 6 key areas that really need focus to be able to properly use SD elements and get the value that you expect. There's a lot of activities, and this is broken down into a full methodology. But again, we'll emphasize what is right for a customer's skill set and environment and determine how this gets done. And also we'll be there to make sure that everything is worked out so that you won't be left after an installation. You'll have an expert team working with you the whole way. So it's about the business outcomes. So some of the experience we've had in a consulting practice working with how to set up an enterprise level threat modeling program. It's very challenging. Most organizations do it in a sort of spotty way or in occasional areas. So we've got sort of some high level recommendations. Now we are consultants, so it depends, will always be the beginning of the answer. But one of the most important things is including more than just the critical applications. When you look at pure manual threat modeling, the intensive nature of that and the limited capacity most organizations have to use, those very scarce resources, they say, okay, we're just doing the most important applications, the one that are external facing, the one we think is the most vulnerable. And they leave the rest of the software the organization is using basically unsupervised or unreviewed. That's common, and it's just the challenge of having an inefficient process. So we're recommending that people take a look at the entire enterprise and not make assumptions about certain medium level, threat exercises not being done. Also, widen the participates in this. This is not just an exercise of the security team. Having the teams involved that actually create the technology and the products is critical to the success. It's also a way of encouraging that shift left and preventing part of it and building secure design in early on. But you've got to do the threat modeling to identify where that needs to happen and how to work with your teams. So building up your capability, instituting a common approach. Many of the organizations we've worked with, we've seen that there's different departments, or they may have security segmented by product line, and they will have dramatically different approaches and different standards they use. If it's a different industry, that would make sense, but for the most part, that really just happens because the teams are doing organically what they think is best based on their skill and experience. It's not a standardized approach for the organization. You need to really leverage technology and officially identify where those common weaknesses and vulnerabilities. It's not something in a larger organization that you can do by keeping track of in Excel, so we've all seen that. And having your AppSec SMEs involved when it's required on the very challenging areas is important, but that needs to be a choice. Many of the organizations, once they're fully deployed and running, the application security teams are actually looking at evolving standards. They're looking at greater testing capability. They're no longer doing the actual threat modeling. They're leveraging the tool sets and the standards and common approach they have. So that's where you really get the leverage throughout the organization. And also the development teams, you're not going to be able to get the approval to do extensive training with them. That's always a nice thing to say. We'll train all our developers, and most of us have to live in the real world where that is also a scarce resource and being applied against business objectives. So it really has to be something that is intuitive and can be taught and brought up to speed very quickly. Otherwise, you're just not going to get success to even move forward in the program. So I think those are sort of the high level recommendations we have that we've seen universally throughout our client base, but we'd love to talk to you more about what your unique challenges are.
That's great. Thank you, Dennis, for giving the audience a walkthrough of our DevSecOps services and for sharing some some wisdom based on what you've seen with our customers. And now I'll pass it over to Laura to talk about our customer success program.
Thanks, Eleanor. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be joining you today. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our customer success program. So at the heart of our program is your customer success manager. So all of our customers get assigned a CSM who really acts as a collaborator, a product expert, and a results driver. So what that means is you are going to collaborate with your CSM. They're going to be talking to you about best practices, what's going on in the industry, and really getting to understand your business to ensure that we're rolling out the product in a way that's going to be most beneficial for you. In terms of a product expert, we pride ourselves on our CSMs really understanding the product inside and out, staying up to date on the latest features and releases so that they can provide all of that information to you. And again, be sure that you are using the product to its best of its abilities and making sure that you're really seeing the value and ROI on your purchase. And in terms of results drivers, it's really important that you partner with your CSM and you come up with KPIs and metrics and things like that that are going to help us understand how the tool is working within your business and making sure that you're seeing some of those things that you want to see in terms of, did you want to save money? Did you want to do things faster? So your CSM is really going to partner with you to be driving that to make sure that you're seeing those results. Next, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about the customer journey and how your CSM works with you throughout your time with us. So we really think of the customer journey as continuous. It never ends. So your CSM actually gets involved the minute you become a customer, and they are going to be a part of your implementation as well. So during that phase, they're really working with you to confirm why you purchased, what are we trying to do, figuring out KPIs and what success looks like for you. And we call this our align phase. After that, you move to what we call execute. So here you're working with Dennis's team to start implementing the tool, but your CSM is also along with you to make sure that you are configuring things in a way that makes sense and that you're getting that first value from the tool. After that, you go into our realize phase. And this is where we're really partnering with you to roll out the software at scale. So really pushing adoption and making sure that this is getting through all of the teams that you've identified and making sure that you're seeing that value and working towards your overall goals. And then lastly, we go into our advocate phase. And this is really where you have recognized full value of the tool. You're seeing the ROI that you'd like to see. But the journey doesn't end there. These different phases continue on. So even after you've reached full value, you may have a new team that you'd like to onboard on SD Elements. You may have a new staff that you need to manage as well. So we just keep going through that loop. And that's how we ensure that we're constantly promoting your success with the tool. And then if we move on to the next slide, here is what we're talking about in terms of that customer success journey. This is what those activities really look like. So what we've been able to discover through working with multiple different customers is that key activities performed continuously throughout your time with us really do equal the pillars that we're trying to hit, which is ROI, partnership and engagement, and adoption of the tool. So your CSM will be performing these activities throughout your journey with us to ensure that we're really hitting the mark on these things. And that pretty much sums up our customer success program. And I know that I'll be sticking around if there's any further questions around the service that we provide.
Thank you so much, Laura. That is a great overview of the program. Yeah, thank you for sharing all the customer journey details with the audience. And now we are going to open it up for the Q&A session. Do we have any questions that we want to address first? Aduran?
Yeah, I saw a question just in the chat here. Will SD Elements generate any data flow diagrams as part of threat modeling? And SD Elements does not generate any data flow diagrams or DFDs. Ultimately, SD Elements tries to take a more automated approach when it comes to identifying and mitigating weaknesses. While DFDs are important to be able to understand what can go wrong, with SD elements, we really want to focus on what are we going to do about it and provide some actionable guidance for developers and operations teams to be able to address and mitigate the weaknesses at hand. DFDs are definitely a really valuable asset, especially for high risk systems. Ultimately you can create your own DFD on top of the content that SD Elements provides. But the content that SD Elements provides is a really good starting point to get that DFD off the ground and be able to also provide actionable guidance to implement the controls that DFD might move towards. And ultimately, this approach aligns with Gartner's best practices around being able to expand the scope of the threat modeling capability to an entire application portfolio rather than focusing in on just core singular items from a threat modeling perspective. So to sum it all up, we don't have support for data flow diagrams, but that allows us to be able to scale and be much more automated.
Thank you, Adrian. I think we have another question from the audience. How long do your customers typically take to model an application in SD Elements?
Eleanor, it's Dennis. If you don't mind, I'll take that one. So how long does it typically take to model an application? Well, we've asked our customers. We've also run some trials internally with some of our expert level resources. And with our consultants and talking to people that are fully deployed and set up, they found it's roughly 10 times less effort, sometimes even better than that in some of the comparisons we're doing. So for a typical user, not a highly skilled, trained AppSec resource, even a complex application would take 25 to 45 minutes would be the sort of an upper bound that we've seen. So people that are very experienced, that have the capability, and if the system is fully set up and modeled for your environment, it's very fast.
Thank you, Dennis. And another question we have, how quickly could a new customer see value in SD Elements?
Sure, I'll take that one, Eleanor. So really what we focus on is we want you to see value immediately. So when you think about your journey with the product, it is a maturity journey. So what we look to do is provide you visibility immediately. So if you haven't been threat modeling before, or potentially you've only been threat modeling on certain applications, as soon as you get up and running with us and model that first application, you already have visibility into some of the threats that you wouldn't have had before. So in that case, value is immediate, and we're looking at potentially anywhere from 2 weeks to 1 month tops. And then that's where the CS program comes in as we partner with you to continue your maturity with the tool to ensure that the value continues over time as well.
Okay, thank you, Laura.
We're going to continue on with the Q&A, but as the questions come in, and if you haven't had a chance to do so, please put them into the Q&A chat. But we are just going to throw up our quick last poll. But Eleanor, I can pass it back to you to carry on with Q&A.
Sure, thank you, Raquel.
Yeah, Eleanor, it seems like there's a good question that came in through the Q&A. Does SD Elements is it in compliance with the MITRE ATT&CK framework, such as the tactics, techniques, and procedures? And ultimately, yes. So the content that is generated within SD Elements does draw from the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So being able to ultimately understand what could potentially go wrong, and then what are we going to do about it. We don't have any specific TTPs outlined within the content itself, but it is something that we draw our content from, if that makes sense.
Okay. Any more questions as you ran it? You see on your end?
There was another really good question on what are the threat modeling methodologies that are supported, such as Stride, NIST 800-154, PASTA, Octave, Trike, VAST. And ultimately, when it comes to SD elements, as you saw earlier through my demonstration, we perform the threat modeling starting by that project survey to be able to understand the project that's actually being worked on. And so we don't actually use those threat modeling methodologies. Ultimately, that survey is used instead to be able to augment that. And what's really nice about the survey is that survey can be actioned by developers, DevOps folks, and folks that might not necessarily be familiar with Stride, Pasta, Octave, Trike, or Vast. They're able to still participate in the threat modeling exercise. And ultimately, for your high-risk applications, you might go through an exercise, using Stride, Octave, Trike, or Vast, and be able to identify some additional weaknesses that might exist, and similarly, some additional countermeasures. And those can be brought into SD Elements to be actioned and sent towards developers in their Jira environment or GitHub to be able to ultimately obtain some action from that threat modeling exercise.
Okay.
I think there's one more question in here that I just wanted to tackle. So in terms of ease of reporting controls and full enhanced description of risk and mitigation, is there any options to exclude exceptions for global apps with mixed jurisdictional rules? And this is definitely really well supported. You might want to be able to have different jurisdictions be augmented out as potentially different releases. That is one easy way to be able to ultimately just change the controls that are outlined and surfaced based on the region that is applicable. And those could be, again, sent to the appropriate Jira project or GitHub project or other issue tracker environment. So, as that global app is being worked on through those various jurisdictions, the appropriate controls can be applied for specific regions.
Okay, I think that's, oh, do we have another question? I think another one just came in, Eduran.
Yeah, so can SD Elements map identified threats to controls like NIST 853 with the recommended control measures to it as a report? Yeah, so ultimately, when it comes to the controls that are suggested by SD Elements, those are directly mapped to things like NIST 853. All of the various regulations that we do support, each of the controls do outline which regulation that is applicable towards. And then, of course, you can report against that. So we do have a NIST 853 compliance report where you can ultimately break that down, section by section and see which tasks are applicable to see which controls have been implemented or which are still outstanding. And we do that for a whole host of regulations beyond NIST 853, but that's definitely one that we support really well.
That's a great question. I do hear from our customers that how much time this saves them and how, not just time, but also anguish in trying to figure out where things map. So great question. Thank you for sending that in. I think those are all our questions. So I will, I think we're ready to wrap up the session. It's really been a great presentation with everybody, and thank you for all your engagement. Raquel, do you want to talk about the next steps here?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you so much again to our speakers for a very engaging session and to our attendees for joining us today and asking your questions and taking part of our polls. For next steps, if you wanted to speak with a Security Compass solutions engineer, please email us at contact@securitycompass.com or check out our website. We have a live chat box. Also, at the end of this webinar, you will be directed to our SD Elements content library. So please take a look at that. We also have any upcoming webinars on our website as well, too, that you can register for. Thank you so much again, and we hope you have a great day and take care.